today's live lilac watercolor tutorial. I am so glad you're here. It's a beautiful day over here. My husband took our two-year-old and our 8-month-old on a drive so that I'd have the house nice and quiet today while I filmed. So it's a great opportunity for me to just kind of relax and paint with you, find people for a little while. So I'm going to talk through some supplies I'm going to use today, and then we'll get started. But before I do that, if you want to say hello in the chat, feel free to just say hello, say where you're from, and I have it off to the side over here so I can see. And also just let me know if you can hear me. Hopefully you can. I have a mic, an external mic, so hopefully you can hear me just fine. Okay, so I'm going to talk through some supplies now. I have with me a 7x10 block of Arches watercolor paper. I have a pencil to sketch with, an eraser. I have 3 different round brushes with me today. Hopefully these will be good. I actually didn't give this too much thought, but I have like a size 5, a size 2, and a size 0. Use whatever you have. It'll be just fine. I have a different selection of paints that I'll use today. I'll probably use sap green, Ariel yellow, a couple of different purples. I have ultramarine violet, Windsor violet, and I will probably use some brown. I'm going to use burnt umber, and I will also use alizarin crimson, which is kind of far enough that I'll just go ahead and put a little bit right here so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so to get started, we are going to do some sketching. So let me just go ahead and pull in my reference today. This is what we're going to be loosely creating together. This is one I just worked on this morning. You can see I have some notes in the top corner here on my order of how I'm going to teach this. It's kind of roughly based on one of my lilac paintings in my shop, but I think it's just a little bit simpler. Maybe it's actually not simpler. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. I'm going to try and keep it around an hour because I have my family coming over at noon, and so I got to get to it. So getting started here, I'm going to just kind of map out, and let me pull this in just a tiny bit. I want it to be as close of a shot as I can get it so you can see all the details I'm working on. And we'll get going. And again, just let me know if you guys can hear me, if there's anything weird in the audio, because I'm doing something a little bit different. So just let me know in the chat if it sounds okay. And I'm going to get to sketching. So I will kind of think here, I'm going to do maybe like 2 inches from the top, about 1 inch from the bottom. It's kind of maybe 1.5 inches here. I'm going to loosely kind of just map out where I want the lilacs to be. I'm not going to draw all those little shapes. No way. It would take me so long. But I'm just going to kind of draw this like lumpy kind of shape. And that's just going to be the mass of flowers. And that's going to kind of change. And I'm going to really articulate the shape as I go. Over here, I'm going to draw a stem down here at the bottom. So about like that. We're going to have a little bit of a knot right here. So just kind of keep that in mind. Right at that knot, we're going to have some leaves growing off to the right. And I had a question that said, do you use hot press or cold press? I use cold press for the most part. I like it. I like the texture. Hot press, I had a hot press moment, but I kind of fell back in love with cold press. And if anybody doesn't know what that means, cold press is very like rough textured, not very, but it has texture to it. And hot press is very smooth. And so it's actually really great for detailed paintings. A lot of detailed watercolor painters prefer hot press. I think that you can get incredible detail with it, but I just prefer the look of cold press. So I don't know. It's all personal preference. Fun to play around though. Okay, so here's one leaf shape. This one is kind of, you can see that it's kind of curved on its side. And then we'll do another one just below it. This one is a little smaller, and this one's kind of a straight on view. Over here, let's do a curling petal. So go ahead and create a nice S shape or a hook shape. And then just on this little bottom hook part, draw another little line underneath it. And then from right here, I'm gonna go up here, just create that round shape, connect it back to the body of flowers here. I'll draw a center vein. If you need a second to just pause the video, look at what I'm doing and sketch it, you can pause it and just press play anytime. And there'll also be a replay of this available to watch in case you kind of get lost at all. Okay, so I'm gonna do just one more leaf over here, and this one will be the most complicated. So try your best. So I'm gonna start with just kind of a line going off towards the right, and then just underneath it, I'm gonna create that S kind of bend shape. And then just underneath there, I'm going to draw kind of a wavy line that connects. And then over here on the top, go ahead and connect this line we started to that bend. And then we're going to do one kind of arching shape up that slants right back down. So creating leaves like this, it's a little bit harder. It takes some practice to create, you know, shapes like this, and takes some drawing skills, but it really takes compositions to another level when you have different, you know, orientations for your leaves. If they all looked like this, it would be okay, but it looks a lot more interesting when all four of our leaves are facing totally different directions and have different looks to them. Okay, so that's actually all we're going to do for a sketch today. Pretty easy, I think. Hopefully you think so too. Okay, so I have some water here. Got paper towel kind of off frame. I'll pull it in just a little bit tighter here. And let's get to painting. So here's kind of the goal. We're gonna start with the first layer of petals, and I'm gonna kind of go between 3 different colors here. So use what you have. You don't have to use the exact same colors. I'm going to use ultramarine violet, which is kind of more of a blue violet. I also am going to be using a little bit of Windsor violet, which is a slightly different color. If you have like ultramarine, if you want to just use pure ultramarine, you could totally do that too. And kind of just, you know, you could use whatever you want. You know, purple's going to be the main color, but we do want to lean a little bit into the blue side, and we want to lean a little bit into the pink side. So this is, this is going to be the goal, the challenge. That's the challenge today, is to try and use all 3 colors. And it's going to feel purple, but we're going to use a lot more like interesting colors in there. So here's what we'll do. I'm going to use my larger brush. This is a size 5, using kind of this purpley mix. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing these little shapes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then I'm going to grab a mix that's a little bit more blue. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to grab a little bit of this pink. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then I'm going to just kind of go between all those 3 colors, using kind of a mix of, sometimes a mix of all 3. Sometimes I'm just using one pure color. Maybe you want to cluster your blue petals together, or maybe you want every single one to be a little bit different. I've painted this twice, and I will say that every time both times it's turned out very differently. And, you know, like I said, I'm referencing a painting that I did years ago in my shop for this class, and that one looks very different too. So it's fun. It's going to be a little bit different than what I did earlier. Yours is going to look totally different than mine, and it's going to be amazing. So leaning more towards the pink here, leaning more towards the purple for this one. And as a whole, it's going to be like subtle, but I think it just gives a bit more interest when you have kind of these warm and cool colors all mixed together. And when you look at a lilac in real life, which I don't know where you live, but where I live, they are like at the peak of their season right now. It's incredible. But there's a lot of color in them. They're not usually just purple, you know. The ends have these little kind of unopened buds that are just a little bit more pink than the rest. And then the ones that are, you know, kind of past their prime are starting to get a little bit more like white purple. So we're trying to keep all this very light. This is very watery. We're going to get darker and darker as we go. I'm going to bring in darker values and we're going to build depth. We're going to build some dimension, some dark shadows behind all these petals. It's going to be fun. And you can also, you know, you don't have to do 4 petals every time. Maybe sometimes you want to just do 1 petal or maybe 1 little bud, kind of just behind, peeking behind a different one. For example, right here, I'll just add like a little pink bud, just a circle, just like that, using just the end of my brush. Do the same thing there. Bring in some more water here, trying to keep it all really watery. We're going to build up some darker values later. So for right now, just keep it light. When we first moved into this home that we live in now, there was a lilac plant that was behind like a giant juniper bush, and it was getting no sunlight. So as soon as we moved in, I asked my husband if he could dig it up for me so we could put it in the spot where it would get more sun. So about 2 years ago, we dug it up. It wasn't in great shape. I don't know how old it is, but it wasn't in great shape. And we moved it to like a really sunny spot. And the first year it did pretty well. You know, it didn't have any flowers, but because we moved it in the spring. Didn't have any flowers, but then the second year it had like flowers literally this big, like an inch big. So I was like, okay, next year. So here we are next year. And again, they're like 2 inches now. And I'm like, darn, I was hoping that this plant would do better. So I think that this fall, I'm going to like really try to fertilize it, and hopefully it'll do better with a lot of amendments to the soil. Okay, so up here, moving over towards my bluish purples again, trying to keep it all inconsistent, not too you know, similar. I actually really like bringing this blue into the mix. I didn't list that in the color list, but I love that. And then I think as I'm getting to the top, it probably would be smart to try and keep it a little bit, well, yeah, maybe a little bit lighter and maybe a little bit more towards the pink. So I'm grabbing some of that alizarin crimson here. So a little bit more into that pink at the very top. And you can also, just like I was saying, you know, just do like little tiny buds. They don't all have to be the 4 petals. Just do a few spots where there's just the little tiny bud peeking out. Fill in maybe a few of these white spots in here. All right, I'm gonna just give this a little bit of thought here. Think about if I like how it all feels as far as like the balance goes. I think that I'll add a little bit more up here, and then maybe just a bud over here. This is kind of just a part where it's feel too perfect. Kind of squinting at it as a whole. I think I like it, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave it there for now. Okay, so now I'm going to I want you to grab some yellow. I'm going to use a Real-In yellow. You can use lemon yellow if you have that, but do a nice crisp cool yellow. And I'm going to do like just an even layer of yellow on my leaves. And so when I do this, the effect it's going to kind of create is the a feeling of like warmth shining through our leaves. I think that lilac leaves have a very beautiful, transparency, kind of warm green color to them. The sun really shines through these leaves. So when you kind of start with that yellow, it just keeps it warm. No matter what I add to it, it's going to keep it really warm. And we're going to be layering some sap green over this yellow, and it's just going to be super warm and beautiful. So we call this a wet on dry application. The paper is dry, but I'm just bringing over some watery yellow to these leaves. And then you can go ahead and paint that stem. You might want to use a smaller brush. I'm still using my size 5, but you might want to do a smaller brush for some of those details. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry as well. And now I'm going to start adding some depth to our petals here. So we're going to use the same colors, but we're just going to start using more of a more saturated mix. So I'll bring all this color back, get it mixed here. So we have ultramarine violet, a little bit of Winsor violet. Oh, okay. Brooke is telling me fertilize in late winter with organic material, mulch in fall to protect roots. That's good to know. That is good to know. That's good because I actually did fertilize all of my plants like a couple weeks ago. And I was thinking I should have done it in the fall. So thank you for that tip. Gardening's hard. It's hard. It's definitely hard to, there's a lot to figure out. And it's interesting because, I was talking to my brother once about it. You really only have so many shots at it, like however, how many years do we all have to live, hopefully a lot, but each season is just one shot to get it right. But I don't know, it's fun. You have to find the fun part in it, right? Or else it just feels like war. I was talking to a friend recently and she was like, gardening is war. I was like, yeah, I guess it is, but I just love it. It's so much fun. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm using my size 2 brush, and I'm going to start kind of like going around. Let me actually move this a little bit so I've got some room for my wrist here. I'm going to just start dropping in this purpley mix behind these petals. I'm not trying to do this perfectly, okay? I am not even really trying to cover all of the white. I'm just trying to add a darker color behind the petals that I already painted, okay? So as you can see, I'm not doing it perfectly. We only have an hour today, so we don't have time for that. But it's about creating a beautiful effect. It's not about doing it perfectly or anything like that. You can add some pink in there. Definitely want to add some of that alizarin crimson. Alizarin crimson is a beautiful dark color. You can mix it too with your purples and add that color. Ooh, I love that actually. Adding that alizarin crimson or pink, whatever pink you have. Adding some pink to the purple. If you want to make your painting really desaturated, you could even you could add some yellow to your purple, and it would make it really like a really desaturated, less vibrant version of this painting, which is actually what my original looks like. It looks very, I'll show you. The original I painted is very desaturated. So you would get that effect by adding probably some yellow to the purple. And yeah, as far as we'll talk about the leaves more later, but for this class, I actually do want to, I'm going to just keep mine more vibrant. I want to talk more about the painting application, the painting technique, instead of talking about like how to mix these really like nuanced, desaturated colors. So I'm kind of going between them now. I'm not trying to use the same color the whole time. Now I'm using more of a true Winsor violet, which is a very dark color, or it can be very dark, depending on how much paint you got in your bristles. It could look almost black. It's one of the darkest values. Windsor Violet is one of the darkest colors of paint there is. It has a super dark value. Okay, almost done here. I'm trying to also keep the centers of my flowers light. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it's okay if you didn't, but try and keep your centers of your little, clusters, like the 1, 2, 3, 4 petals. I'm trying to keep that part light, just more so like around the edges of my petals is where I'm adding the darker color. And I apologize if I'm moving a little bit quickly today. There's a lot of details here, and I'm kind of more just explaining my technique and not really explaining every single stroke and brush I'm doing. So if you need to pause it, like I said, you can go ahead and pause it at any time and then just press play, and you're not going to get kicked off or anything like that. Okay, adding some darker values over some of these purples I already dropped in. Okay, I'm going to leave it there for now. And I'm going to do one more thing to the flowers, and then we'll move on to the leaves. I'm going to use this very small brush here. I switched over to a size 0. And I am going to first zoom that in just a tiny bit. I'm going to grab some yellow, and I'm going to drop just little dots of yellow. This is a very subtle detail in the center of those little clusters that I painted, those little clusters of 1, 2, 3, 4. If you can't see a little white spot in the middle of your petals, that's totally okay. Just drop the yellow on top of the purple, and I think it'll still look really nice. If you happen to have it, you could use a color like Naples yellow, which is very opaque, which means that it's going to lay on top of that the purple paint, and you'll be able to see it really well. It's kind of like a thicker watercolor. Okay, so that feels good. I don't think I missed any, and if I did, it's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna let all of that dry, and then I'm gonna go back to the leaves. So for my leaves, I think that I will do, how about this? I'm gonna do some sap green. And I think I want to just mix a tiny bit of purple, if that's okay with you guys. You don't have to. If you want to just use sap green, you totally can. But I think I like to take it down a punch, like just a little bit. I think sap green with a real yellow behind it is just very vibrant, and I generally do like my colors to be a little bit less vibrant, a little bit more desaturated. So I'm just mixing a little bit of purple, but again, you can just use pure sap green and it's going to look amazing. Okay, so using a nice watery mixture, I just brought a drop of water to my palette so that I have a good amount of water in that mix. I'm using my larger brush, my size 5, and I'll do a pass of this green over my yellow. And it's beautiful and so warm. Okay, same thing right here. Okay, and I'm going to right up here at the top, so I'm just dropping a little bit of that extra dark color right there. Okay, let's go over to these leaves on this side. I'm going to think about trying to keep the center vein light. You can tell I kind of did it there, but I didn't do it perfectly, and that's totally okay. But yeah, if you can keep that center vein light, that's a nice effect. And then I will do the same thing back here, trying to keep that center vein light. All right. One last leaf for now. And I will do, I'm going to actually keep the edge yellow for now, and I'll come back. All right. So one last detail I'll do for these leaves. So getting that green mix going, I am going to drop some extra dark on the back side of this petal, or this leaf right there. And then I'm going to also drop a little bit extra shadow right here. We're going to kind of imagine that the light is coming from this direction. So it kind of makes sense that that would be kind of shadow. Maybe these leaves in general can be just a little bit more shaded. I'm going to use my smaller brush here to paint over the stem, the yellow stem. And while I'm kind of working these leaves, I'm going to go ahead and drop even more dark value using this small brush. I'm going to go ahead and paint on some veins on these leaves, and it's going to kind of bleed it out because it's all wet, and that's okay. I'll drop a little bit of extra shading over here on the right side, just along that center. And drop even more dark green right up here in these petals. Same thing over here, and then just a little bit more on the back side of this petal where it's curving. So there's some great, kind of gives it that great impression of some shadow and some movement. That's kind of how we create form. It's by using those little shadows like that. Okay, let me think here real quick before I go back. I'll add a little bit of dark green here along this petal here. And then since this here is pretty dry for me, I'll go ahead and drop some light green right here on the tip of that curving leaf. Okay, let all that dry. I'm going to go back to the lilacs. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to add some more depth to our petals, and I'm going to do that in a couple of ways. So, and maybe I shouldn't say depth. Let's say we're going to add some detail. So there's a few things we're going to do. I want to maybe start with grabbing some purple. And what we're going to do is just go around. This is definitely starting to get into some detailed territory here. Use your small brush, grab some purple. I want you to go around the circles. And I'm not actually maybe necessarily doing full circles around those little yellow dots, but maybe like 75% circles. Does that make sense? It's kind of hard to, I don't know if you can see that detail very well, but I'm doing just the faintest kind of wispy line around it, but I'm not trying to make it like a perfect circle. So I'm just kind of doing maybe like a half circle there, like a C shape there, little tiny comma there. It's so hard to express. I feel like you have to like have a little bit of a magnifying glass to see what I'm doing there, but just keeping it really light. It's a very subtle detail. Use your very finest brush that you have here. Okay. And there's one I forgot to add the yellow. So I'll go ahead and add a little bit of yellow there. Okay, and then we're gonna do another really fun detail here. This is a very detailed kind of painting. It really is. Even though it's gonna be a quick version of a detailed painting, there's just lots of little things, and it's so much fun because the impression at the end is gonna be just like, whoa, lots of details. So it's very satisfying to work on. Okay, what I'm going to do now is using the same small brush. I am going to go around so you know we have our little groups of 4. I'm going to do kind of just like these little lines along the petals. I'm not trying to necessarily cover every single petal perfectly. In some, I might just do a little loop at the top. And then this one, I might just do something like that. So here, watch, a loop at the top on this one, and then just a half loop there, full loop there. This is just going to create an effect. You don't have to get every single one super detailed by any means. It's going to create an impact, but don't overthink it and spend too much time. You can just kind of create these little wispy lines. This is kind of how lilacs look in real life. They definitely have like some interesting kind of definition to the petals when you look at them up close. So let's try our best to do it quickly without, overthinking it too much. I'm going to do it on these little buds here as well. And, if I'm going to be true to how I've been working earlier, I should be switching up the colors, which I will do. But I'm not necessarily trying to match colors to every little flower. That would be a lot of effort, and I don't think it's necessary, so we won't worry about that. It already makes such a big difference looking at that half versus this half. Like it is, and we still have more details to go after this, so I love it. I really do enjoy painting flowers with lots and lots of little details and figuring out ways to you don't have to do every single little flower totally photorealistic for it to look like a, kind of somewhat realistic painting. I love it. It's just the effect, Okay, so I'm mixing up and add some more of the alizarin crimson to these ones over here. Adding my little wispy lines. This part might take you a little while, so if I move on before you're done, just pause it and then catch up to me. All good. I'm going to add some darker alizarin crimson to these petals, or these little tiny buds that are kind of on the outskirts here and there. So just adding a little bit of this purpley pink mix, adding it to the right and left side, using my little brush. Okay, what I want to do now is while that's drying, I'm staying on the flower for a little while. I'm going to grab some more dark purple, and I'm going to grab some alizarin crimson, mixing these together. I'm going to go in these little crevices and add even more depth. Just in a few places. I'm not trying to cover every. So basically I want there to be like very light purples, medium purples, like medium value, medium darkness, and then very dark. So we want there to be a spectrum of really light and really dark. And I think that really helps to create a lot of interest and realism. Even though I don't think anybody would look at this and be like, is this a photo? Oh my gosh. And truthfully, I don't personally, that's not what I want as a painter. I don't want people to look at my paintings and say, oh, I thought that was a photo. I think that that's a skill, no doubt. Like when people can make paintings that look like photographs, no doubt that that's a skill, but I don't think that that's necessarily an artistic rendering. You know what I mean? Like I want a little bit of my personality and my style and my preferences, and I want your preferences to come through and little choices that, you know, are unique for you to come through. So yeah, so you gotta think through these things. You know, adding those little tiny moments of super dark, it really brings a big punch. And I'm just going to grab some pure alizarin crimson now. I'm going to just add that pinky mix in here. Okay. This is feeling good. Okay, so I have one last detail for this, the flowery part, the lilac petals. And what we're going to do now is we're going to grab the purple mix, and let me demonstrate right here in this center, the center petal here. What I'm going to do is, starting on the center of this, this very center, I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can do it on 10 petals, you could do it on 20 petals, you could do it on every single one. And that's just going to help us add even more detail. Just adding a really dark purple to those centers. Again, you can be mixing it up by adding some alizarin crimson to some of them. You know, changing up your purple color, your purple mix, or you can do every single one the same dark purple. I think it's going to look amazing either way. And this is just starting to add like some major drama, some real definition to these petals. So fun. I just love it. I realized this morning I was just feeling a little, maybe it was because of teaching a class. Sometimes I get kind of nervous to do live classes. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I was feeling kind of nervous this morning. So I was like, okay, just go for a walk, be outside. Being outside always really makes me feel super grounded and really calm. Spent some time with the kids. But to tell you the truth, like generally, if I just start painting, that makes me feel very calm. It's such a calming practice for me to just sit down, especially when I'm doing these kind of, you know, repetitive little brush strokes like this, creating something out of nothing. It's just so, I think it's so fundamental to being a human, just creating. Love it. And then, you know what you can do too, even if you're not like following the 4-petal format, you know, because, you know, we painted just a bunch of little like petals that are kind of overlapping and stuff. You can just add those little brush strokes here and there. Okay. Adding some dark purples to just the bases of some of these little unopened buds. That's a really great little detail as well. You could also, I mean, if some of you guys, it's funny, sometimes I'll see your tutorials from my class. I'm like, wow, that's way more detailed than mine. That's amazing. You know, so, okay, let's say I was going to just have some fun here and really make it detailed. I would take this fine line, this like very fine brush, I mean, and create these little fine lines on just maybe a few of these petals. You don't have to do it on all of them, but maybe on a few. That would look really nice. I actually really like how this one's turning out. This one feels better than the version I did this morning, which I'll tell you what, it doesn't always go that way. Generally, there's something about doing it live that sometimes I'm just like, well, it's okay. But the version I did by myself when I didn't have an audience turned out better. But actually, I like this one better, which is just being honest. So, okay, a few more details there, and then I think I will stop with the petals for now, forever. And I'm going to go back to the bottom here. So I'm going to switch over to my size 2 round brush. By the way, these brushes are professional watercolor sable brushes from Winsor & Newton. They are great. I actually really like these ones. I didn't use them for a long time, but lately they've been working really well for me. So I'm going to use some brown. I'm using just some burnt umber. Use whatever brown you have. If you don't have brown, just use green. And it'll be great. So I'm just going to paint this stem here. And then I'm going to grab just a little bit of purple. Add some purple to it and just make it super dark. And just add this little knot right here in the wood, in the branch. Drop a little bit of that dark color along the right edge. Okay, let me think here if I want to do anything else to my leaves. I think I should. I think it needs a little bit more. So I'll grab some more green. Bring it back over here to my green little section of the palette. Paola asked me if you don't have alizarin crimson, what other color could you use? I think that's what you're asking. You know, you could use any pink that you have. I have one here called Opera Rose, which is great. If you have the color called Windsor Red, that could work. Let me know if anybody else has any suggestions of a good pink color that is similar to alizarin crimson. I am kind of an alizarin crimson diehard. That's kind of always my pink go-to, but I do use Opera Rose sometimes as well. Okay, so I'm using this green, using a size 2 brush. I'm going to add my little veins. I think that's the last detail I want to bring to this, to these leaves here. And I will maybe just drop a little bit of darker green around the edges. I'm just going to go ahead and do all this while I got the green on my brush. Maybe dropping a little bit more dark values in those little shadowy crevices there. I'm going to drop some more dark green here on this leaf. Okay, I think for this leaf right here, I'll drop a little bit just on the right side, or the top side, I guess, of this stem. I'm going to clean that brush off, and I'm just going to smooth out everything I just did. Just a little bit, not trying to really scrub it or anything. I'm just trying to create soft lines, just make it all feel just a little bit more natural by just kind of moving those hard paint lines just a little bit. It kind of helps to like feather it out just a little bit. And I wonder if you find the same to be true, but I think that real in yellow, or the yellow color that I painted underneath, it really shines through and it looks so beautiful. Especially over here, that just looks awesome. I almost feel like I want to scrub out a little bit more color just so I can get more of that yellow shining through. So watch, if I were to just lift out some of that green, just using this size 2 brush, blot it off, and then lift a little bit here. That yellow is just shining right through like stained glass. It's so pretty. And maybe a little bit right here. You can lift a little bit from just a few places. kind of in the center of those, you know, petals in between those vein lines. It's always a good spot to kind of lift a little bit of color if you want to. Lift a little bit right here. I always say, you know, one of my favorite tricks is to just squint at my painting, and then it helps me to just kind of see it like from far away. It's almost like stepping back, and I can look at it as a whole and not get too caught up in all the little tiny details that I'm currently working on. But also, when I'm teaching a live class, I actually have my computer open over here a couple feet away from me, and looking at the screen and looking at what I'm painting is actually really helpful because I really am able to see it kind of as a whole. So it's an interesting way to paint. Okay, so let me think here. I think I really like this one. I don't think I want to change anything. So I will call it for today, and that actually went a lot quicker than I expected. I thought it would take me like an hour and a half. So I'm going to erase what I can here. Definitely wait till your painting is totally dry to do this. I live in one of the driest places in the world, so my paintings dry really quickly. I say that and then I smudge some paint. So don't do like I do. Wait until it's totally dry, then try and get some of those pencil markings up. But yes, I'm really happy with this one. I hope you guys are happy with how your paintings turned out as well. Thank you so much for joining me. If you want more tutorials on a regular basis, be sure to check out my Patreon. I think I have a link. Excuse you. I think I have a link down in the description below, but I hope you guys have a beautiful day, and I will see you again soon. Bye.